Hello, good afternoon and welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by Nicola De Blasio. Nicola is a senior fellow at Harvard at the Belfer Center for Energy. He gave a tremendous presentation this morning on your model that you and your research team have been developing, I guess around hydrogen and the potential change, I guess, in the energy system. We saw a lot of different maps and interesting overlays of some of the factors that are going to potentially, I guess, shift the geopolitics of energy with this transition to a clean energy system and the integration of clean molecules into the system. So maybe give us some of your thoughts about the overall model and what you think are the key takeaways.
So when we look at the future of hydrogen and how adoption of hydrogen at scale will affect geopolitical market dynamics, but also value chains, we take into consideration and we focus mainly on green hydrogen. We can talk about why, but we focus on three variables, which are the key, what we say, underlying economic fundamentals. So we don't consider incentives. We want to take a picture of where countries are today and then ideally think where they want to be in 2030, 2050, and give policymakers and other stakeholders the means to take informed decisions about policy instruments, technology innovation funding, and long-term investment in enabling infrastructure. So for green hydrogen, we look at three different variables. The first one is the overall renewable energy potential of a country. We subtract primary energy demand, so the assumption there is that it doesn't go in competition with other electrification processes. And then we factor in land availability through population density.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about green hydrogen produced by water splitting, then we consider freshwater resources availability. And then we look at infrastructure. Because today, as you know, there is no infrastructure deployed at scale. There's some pipelines in the US and in Europe, but mainly for captive markets. We use a proxy. And basically, we make the assumption that countries which in the past have been able to deploy energy infrastructure at scale will be able to do so also in the case of hydrogen. And the proxy that we use is the competitive index, the infrastructure competitive index, so it factors in also more financial variables. And on the basis of this, we cluster countries into 5 groups that we call export champions, water-constrained producer, major importers, self-sufficient producer or regional exporters, and infrastructure-constrained companies.
Yeah.
And we draw the geopolitical map, which shows a new world of importing and exporting nations.
Yeah. No, it was very interesting. I was struck particularly by the impact of the water resources and one of the bigger players that you highlighted were Norway. So I hadn't seen a lot around Norway previously, but right, it's a very, very big country. It's got a lot of hydropower. It's got a lot of potential offshore wind, and also struck, but potentially mapping out some of the actual impacts around water, which obviously we know water is an issue in a lot of the Sun Belt. We're expecting increasing climate stress, and obviously expecting there to be greater costs associated with that. Is that how you see it, and also potential negative impacts if we're trying to really scale a super huge industry? I guess the impact of brine is that.
Yes. So as I said, we look at where countries stands today. So like Saudi Arabia, today's water constraint, they could build desalination. The challenge there, as you said, it's also brine. Now, a couple of research groups, one at Stanford and one in Australia, are actually looking at using seawater directly in the electrolyzer. Right now, it's difficult because of the salt that corrodes everything. Now, on the water side, people tend to forget that you do water splitting, but when you actually burn hydrogen in a fuel cell, the byproduct, if you want, is water again.
Yeah.
So for mobility, it's not going to work. But if you were to think about the stationary application, you could envision a situation where you could actually recycle the water.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, there's been some opportunities for circularity there. And in terms of the impact of your research, I know it's reached the halls of the EC Commission. What further research do you think is required, and how do you go forward from now?
So we have different streams. We look at both the impact of hydrogen adoption at scale for countries or regions. So we've done the study that you mentioned for the European Union. We looked at China, we looked at India. We're now looking into the US. We look at sectors, so we looked at hydrogen adoption in transportation, but also industrial sectors. So in a way, the geopolitics and market dynamics are more about the supply side, and then we look at how adoption of hydrogen at scale would affect existing value chains. And basically, the logic there is, would industrial clusters, and we focused mainly on ammonia, methanol, and green steel, would they relocate closer to where the hydrogen is produced, or vice versa?
Yeah. I mean, we've certainly seen that potentially with H2 Green Steel, one of the first new green refineries in Europe, which is obviously being located on iron ore, and also very, very good renewable resources. And so therefore you're suggesting that there could be challenges to maintain legacy industries that have been located due to fossil fuel sources, or indeed being located nearer customers.
Yes, but you could also have opportunities for countries to basically upgrade their long value chains. Yeah. Now, I think that the key issue, though, is that we need to carry out a system-level analysis, because we've seen in the past the results of the regional deployment of energy infrastructure, which has created market asymmetries because the overall system dynamics were not considered. Yeah. We've seen it with natural gas in Europe, with the grid in the US. And so in order to have the most efficient and effective hydrogen markets in the future, we really need to countries need to think what role they want to play, how to get there, and so do other stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point in terms of referencing the inefficiencies in the existing energy system. I've often thought, people have often complained about going into a variable supply system, but we've had variable demand for years. We've had peaker power plants that sit idle and are amortized, only from a few hours operation a year. So there are inherent inefficiencies in the existing energy system that can potentially be addressed with the variable renewables technologies, with coupling in hydrogen and obviously IT and advances in data. So yeah, it's a very good point, and fascinating to talk to you. We wish you well and success in developing your research, and thanks a lot for coming all the way across the pond to little old Europe. And I hope you found the event beneficial.
Very much so. Thank you for having me, Nadim.
Cheers.
Thank you.